So here I was, and I'm still dealing with God, and I'm still talking to him, and he takes me back to Exodus 13, and let's look at verse number 10. He says, "You shall therefore keep this ordinance in its season from year to year." So he told me to go back in time and look at my life and start to think about and see just what he's done for me in my life. And so one of the things that frustrates my wife, I can talk about it, she ain't here, but if y'all tell her what I said, I'm going to get you. One of the things that frustrates my wife about me is I have a tendency to hold on to things. You might say I'm a little pack rat or whatever. I like to hold on to stuff. See, she's the trash queen. She'll throw something away in a minute. And the funny thing about her, she'll throw it away, and then 2 months later, she'll be looking for that very same thing. Like, have you seen such and so-and-so? I said, no, I ain't seen such and so-and-so. Are you sure you haven't seen such and so-and-so? No, I haven't seen such and so-and-so. Did you throw such and so-and-so away? No, I didn't throw such and so-and-so away. Well, we can't find it, so you must have thrown it away. And then she'll go buy the very thing that she threw away 2 months ago. So that frustrates me. Don't tell her I said that, all right? One of the things that frustrates her about me is I tend to hold on to things. Because I like to remember the past. I like to remember where I've come from. So God said, I want you to go back in time. And when you get a chance, I want you to sit down and examine your life and go back into time and start to remember the things that God has done for you. So he told me to grab this jar of peanut butter. Now, for somebody, y'all might want to make a sandwich later, but that's okay. He said this jar of peanut butter should be a memorial for you. Because back in spring of 1998, James, you remember you was a sophomore in college at Morehouse, and you barely had a thing. You had nothing to eat. It was a Friday afternoon, and you had to wait till Monday before you got your work study check, and so you was left with nothing but a jar of peanut butter and an apple. And the decision had to be made by me when I was going to eat, so they could carry me until I got my check on Monday morning. So I'm looking at this jar of peanut butter, and I'm planning on when I'm going to eat that. I didn't even have bread and jelly to go with it. All I had was a peanut butter and a spoon. And I had an apple. So I had to make a decision that I was going to eat that apple Friday afternoon. And then on Saturday, I was going to eat my peanut butter. And I was going to eat some more peanut butter on Sunday until Monday came, and then I'll be able to get my check so I can get some food. But while I was making my plans, here comes a care package in the mail. My grandmother and my aunts and my uncles, they all pooled their resources, and they sent me a care package, and it had all kinds of food. It had Vienna sausage. Y'all know Vienna sausage. Y'all remember Spam, too. And when you're hungry and you're desperate and you need something to eat, that's some of the best food you can eat. You got some folks sauteing that stuff, adding onions and adding gravy. Shoot, it get good when you're hungry. So I remember how God provided for me. Jehovah Jireh, my provider. I remember that time. I remember when in 1994, or April 9th, I was standing in a community center family room, and I was standing under a golden arch. And I remember when this beautiful young woman was coming down the aisle, and I was smiling, showing all 32, and she was smiling, showing all her 32. And I remember watching her come down the aisle as I'm about to say I do to the woman that God has showed me in a dream 3 years ago that this would be my wife, and I had never met her before. I remember that time. And I remember 2 years later, 1996, we started looking for a house because God stirred up in my spirit that he wanted to bless us with a home. And so I remember in 1996, we started looking for a home. And I began to look all over the city of Atlanta, but then he led me to this home in Stone Mountain, Georgia. And I remember walking through that home with an agent, and I remember telling my wife, this is the house that God wants to bless us with, because he showed it to me in a dream. I remember that time. And I also remember packing up my wife one night, and our daughter, and our son, who was a baby at the time. We got in our old Volkswagen Fox. We drove from Norcross to Stone Mountain just to sit in the driveway of that home. My kids probably was thinking, this fool is crazy. It's the middle of the night, and we sitting here in a driveway of a house, and my wife was probably looking at me cross-eyed too, but I just had to sit there to make sure that this was the house that God said he was going to bless us with. And I remember in March of that year, God blessed us with that home. I remember the time. And then he told me to go pull this folder, because back in 2004, I was so frustrated with the situation I was in on my job. I remember starting to look for a job. I remember that a promise had been made to me that he was going to move me from where I was. And I remember sending hundreds and hundreds of resumes, applying for hundreds and hundreds of jobs. I remember looking through every newspaper, every Sunday, every chance I got. I remember I could tell you what job was being offered, how much it was paying, who was offering it. I remember the company name. I remember the contact person. I remember when. And I remember when I got frustrated because nothing was happening, because I wasn't getting any answers. I wasn't even getting any phone calls. I also remember that in June of 2004, God blessed me with a job. And he said, I know what you wanted, but I want you to work full-time in ministry. And so I had to bless you with what I wanted you to have. I remember when. Then he told me to pull this binder out, because in 2005, he stirred up in my spirit that I want to bless you and I want to clean up your credit. And so I remember starting in 2005 pulling credit reports, and I remember all the letters and things and communications that we would send to our creditors. I remember that conversation that God was having with me. And I remember starting to put together this debt cancellation book, and every contact that I made and everything that I did to do what God told me to do. And I remember doing all those things, and it seemed like it was an uphill battle. And I remember fighting and calling this person and emailing this person. I remember doing all that in 2005. At the end of the year, I thought it would all be done. I mean, you can't clean your credit up if it's jacked up in a year. But here's what I do remember. In October of 2006, God canceled that debt. I remember the time. Then God is kind of crazy, so he told me in the same year, 2006, while I'm working on cleaning up my credit and Val's credit, he tells me, I want you to start looking for a home. God, I'm trying to clean up credit. What you want me to start looking for a home for? He said, because I'm about to do a new thing in your life. And so I remember looking for a house south of Atlanta. I remember going from Locust Grove to Riverdale. I remember going from Camp Creek Parkway to McDonough. I remember going to Stockbridge, to Jonesboro, to Riverdale, to Forest Park, to Morrow. I remember looking all weekend long. You got to understand, when God stirs something up in me, I can't let that thing go. And the search became exhausting. I could tell you every listing that was out at that time. I could tell you what the house looked like, how big the kitchen was. I could tell you what the schools were, who the principals of those schools were. The search got so exhausting that my wife started getting weary. Got tired of going with me, because we go every Saturday and Sunday. Then the kids totally boycotted the process. They was like, just leave us home. Leave some food in the house, leave something to drink, and just go. We're not going with you. I remember going out every weekend. I got frustrated with that, because it seemed like I know what God said, but ain't nothing happening. But in May of 2007, God blessed us with the home he wanted us to have. I remember the time. Back in 1992, there was a song that was put out by Michael Jackson. Y'all know that guy, Michael Jackson? He put out this song back in 1992, and it was entitled, Do You Remember the Time? And that song, it says, do you remember the time? And there was some lyrics that when we fell in love. And people really liked that song. It was very popular at the time. But God wants to change the lyrics today. God wants to know, do you remember the time? Do you remember the time that he healed you when the doctor said you couldn't be healed? Do you remember that time? Do you remember the time that he rescued you from a dark situation when you should have went to jail for what you was doing? Do you remember that time? Do you remember the time when he provided for you when you had nothing? Do you remember that time? How many can remember the time when he blessed you when you